another special edition of the Nerding with Friends podcast, Behind the Pages. I'm your co-host, C-Roll Money Money, that's C.RO $. I'm joined with my co-host, Codename Comet.
Salutations, my fellow blurs, nerds, and peaceful herds. It's your boy Codename Comet. How y'all doing?
Very special episode today. This is our second edition of Behind the Pages, where we take you into the ins and outs of making comic books, some updates on Viroco issue number 2, some behind the scenes stuff, some updates, all the fun and what goes on in making this action anime inspired thing happen. And with that, we couldn't do this without the art director of Countdown Publishing, lead illustrator for Viroco, Michael Bishop. Welcome.
It's a pleasure to be on.
Always good to have you, man. So,
yeah,
guys, it's here. The second issue of Viroco is coming down the pipeline. And we just wanted to thank everybody. If you're listening to this, more than likely you've purchased a copy, and thank you for all your support. We just want to, transparency is really big for us. We just want to make sure everybody knows a lot of the things that's going on, especially with this very special second issue. It has been a while since an episode, maybe one day, an issue of Viroco is dropped. And first things first, thank you for your patience. And, to be transparent, we do want to talk about some of the things that delayed this. I'll definitely take part of this. Life has been ups and downs, job changes, life changes, just the things that involve being a parent and an adult. So, that's my big hang up. And then I'll pass it over to Mike. So, we can talk about some of the things that he's got going on.
Yeah, for me, it's just being busy with school, like my regular day job, just being hectic. And then also I have a separate illustration project that was getting pretty hectic with stuff. So that definitely held up the second issue somewhat. And then a more exciting take, though, is us also looking at doing our next series and then kind of already getting a head start with that.
Yeah. So it's really great that we're trying to do more, bring you guys more content. And honestly, I think the break did us some good. When you guys have seen it, so hopefully you've read the first one and you can see the quality has changed from the writing to the drawing to the format. We're really starting to get into that groove of, actually creating a comic and getting into just finding our footing in this industry.
Mm.
And one of the other things that we did do different is, before, you'll notice there are 2 names on the first issue, but there'll be 3 on this next one. They'll be brought in the man himself, Codename Comet, to be a bigger help than he was on the first issue. So, Codename, you want to tell the people what you've been working on for issue number 2?
Yeah, man. Yeah. So I appreciate y'all again for me, adding me to the fold. We acknowledge that collaboration is key. It made no sense for the 3 heads of Countdown Publishing not to be involved in everything that we work on, because together we go farther. So I jumped in to really kind of help. It really helped Mike. It's like allow Mike to be able to do whatever he's doing, and also like not have to go back and worry about, I didn't do this, because honestly more eyes on it just helps. I've had times on it where I've had my wife come in and just look at it real quick and say, hey, is there anything that I missed? And she'll call out little things, and I'm like, dang, how did I miss that? So it's just having more people work on it, having more people to kind of put eyes to the project. It adds more ideas to it, and then it allows me and my team to kind of go back and forth as artists, like thinking about it from a mental artboard where it's like, hey, like, what if we did this? And, what if, from this perspective, we kind of worked like this? And it just kind of allows us to view the story, take the words. And I think I've said this before, but take the words and put a movie behind it. And not that, for all that Chris can provide with us is from a written standpoint and all he understands from a directorial standpoint, he'll keep it honest and tell you, it's like, hey, I leave it up to y'all to be the creators. I leave it to y'all to be artistic and bring whatever it is y'all have to the table. And I think it just genuinely helps having three different minds kind of with three different skill sets all come together and create something. I don't have, I like to say I have a background in a little bit of every type of art, but like when I first started doing any kind of creative, stuff, it was, I wanted to be a cartoonist and I wanted to be an architect. So my process was always building worlds. I always thought about it from the overall perspective not why just things happen, is like, how is it happening? What can we do within the art and the storytelling itself to show you more of what's going on the pages? And I appreciate Chris giving me the freedom to, reach out and be like, hey, I know this is going to happen in the story at some point. Can I do a little Easter egg here? Can I add a little bit of like, story here and there just to bring out a little bit more, to get people talking a little bit more, and to ultimately like get you to understand and love the story of Viroco more through the little keys and, here and there of, what the whole thing is about. So, I really enjoyed this whole thing, and I find myself working a little bit slower than I wanted to, but I think it actually kind of worked out because there's a lot of different times where I'm like, if I didn't take this time, I wouldn't have saw this thing, and it made me think about this and put this into the process. I feel like the last page, I remember telling Chris a week ago, hey, I got one page to go and I'm gonna be done. And when I tell you, I just finished all of the drawing elements of the page last night, but it's one of my favorite pages just due to what it does for the world. And it was a page that I initially looked at and I said, you know what? I can copy this because this is here, and I can do this and this and this, and that'll be that. Don't have to worry about nothing else. And then I looked back at the page and I thought about it from the processes of what is this page? Where are they? What does this mean for the story? And what can I incorporate into the story by simply putting something a little bit more? And instead of it just being them standing around doing nothing, we got an atrium to the gym now, and that's something that I'll have forever. Like I'll go back eventually and recreate this in a way so I can see every different aspect of it. And as this continues to build, I look forward to the days when I'm pulling a blender and I'm showing everybody, hey, this is what the Shuja Arena truly looks like from the inside and out. And that wouldn't have happened if, we didn't take the time to actually understand what it is that we're building.
And I would say that's one of the biggest, more helpful things too with the switch and with the change, because Dom is such a good fit for what we already have. Because like for me, I prefer drawing people, and like I can draw architecture and stuff, but I don't really have an art mindset for like architecture. So I'm like, it's going to be a city. It's a rectangle. And like I could draw it, but like it's not going to be as creative as it should be for something that's like world building. And I think that was a really great fit. The other thing too is it just feels a lot more professional too, because that's what they do. And like even with like manga artists, and then also with just comic books, is like you have a penciler, you have an inker, sometimes you have a colorist as well. And then really being able to break up that process, it does help like a lot. And being able to see the difference with that process too, I understand a lot more why they had that. Because like when we did the first issue of Viroco, I was like, why they need all? I was like, I could do all those things. Like I can color, I can
do all these parts.
But it's like
I can play these roles.
Yeah, but it's like after you draw all those pages, and you're like, ooh, there's a lot of pages. And then you're sitting there and you're like, I'm doing line art for all these pages. And then you start coloring. It's like it does add up. Like it's it adds to your skills, and it does help with the story progressing, and you do get to see like the process of it like improving, but it's just it's a long trek, especially the way I did it with that first issue, because I did all the pencils and then I did all the inking and then I did all the coloring, and I'm like, I'm drawing another brown person. I'm coloring more brown. Like,
Literally.
and it's just like, and it's fun the first couple of pages, but when you hit like those last pages, you start to feel it a little bit. So
Oh man,
it's
that
nice to have
fatigue
it.
is so real, dog. Like I went through so many phases where I was like, I had to like kind of stop myself because I'm like, I want to make sure that I'm maintaining the same love and consistency per page. And you get to doing it sometimes, and you look at the same page over and over again, and you're like, man, no one's gonna care if I just copy this. And then I thought about it as like someone's gonna notice because
they'll notice.
And just for that person alone is like and I think about it from the process of, or the point of, it's been so long. If y'all are gonna wait this long, I have to make it worth your while, because otherwise, like, what did you wait for?
Yeah, because it got to a point too where I was like, I was drawing Tyron, but I was drawing Tyron so much, I was like, I'm drawing, I'm drawing Tyron. Like, I love Tyron, like his design too, where we finally got it down. But I'm like, I've been drawing Tyron so many times like throughout this issue that it's like, you start to feel it too. Cause especially like, I like to work in bulk. Like I'll get like real motivated. I'm like, I'm going to do all these pages like in these next couple of hours. And then it's like, I drew Tyron like 20 times and I'm like,
hey, and
it gets,
it's crazy you say that, because another thing I just wanted to talk about, and part of that delay is us figuring out that it doesn't have to be perfect. Like Tyron on the first page he's in does not look the same as Tyron on the last page he's in, because from that start, even from issue 1 to issue 2, I remember there was one point where I saw a page, I was like, who is this? You like, that's Tyler. I'm like, what? You sure? So it's the evolution that I'm enjoying seeing in the writing and the drawing and the illustrations, the way paneling is done, the way how we are, putting our own little spin on things. And I think to go back to that, and we mentioned, if you're waiting this long, we want it to, have some value. It's definitely something that we will do. Stay tuned for the end of this, or fast forward, whatever you want to do. But what I also think was a big part in all of this is that we were able to all talk about it and collaborate on, after it's written, after some pages have been drawn, things have been inked, we're doing like our own self edits. And there's so much that we want to do, so much we want to include. And I think it came to the point where it's like, we're going to get it out. It's going to look good. But eventually we do want to do volumes and, add like some type of anthology of the other works and the projects we're doing. And we'll update pages, and, we'll let people know like what's canon to the story going forward. And, it's something that you see a lot in things like manga, where they have to come out on a weekly basis. With American comic books, it's usually monthly. Sometimes they get a bigger break than that, and it goes through a lot. Where mangas, they have teams, but it's usually broken down to the point where it's very like almost like a content factory. I think that, we appreciate everybody getting these individual issues. We're going to make that worth your while, but if you want everything, we're going to have, deals for people who bought the single issues for these anthologies.
And I also look at Viroco, because this is something that I was definitely say I had a misconception with when we first started is that like I'm an experienced artist, so like you're an experienced writer, right? Like we're all experienced, like we're both experienced artists, right? And then it was just like we have all this experience. Like making a comic should be easy. Like we should like we're gonna be experienced when it comes to making a comic. And like we consume like we both are all three of us consume the media, right? And so it's like translating that into the comic should be easy. But learning that process is harder than it looks. Like paneling is so much harder than it looks.
Yeah.
And especially like I felt like with that first issue, it was like I was looking at stuff that we saw and like manga and like and other comics, and I was like, oh, we're killed this like paneling with stuff. But then trying to do all that, it just made it more difficult and made the other kind of like process that we're still learning kind of like more difficult because it's the basics just weren't there yet. But I feel like
Imagine
that's
when we
where
get to the point where we're capable of breaking the panels and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Like how everything's going to look and transition from that point. Like when we're really able to like expand where we started. Like I feel like the story itself is going to evolve in so many different ways that, you know, to look at Viroco 1 and today and look at it again 10 years ago, like 10 years from now, like we will have to recreate it because it just won't be the same story in so many aspects. So it's like you kind of got to set yourself up for, hey, this is a blanket. You know, this is going to be here, but just don't worry about it. It looks like this.
But I was just looking at like a small thing because there's like, even with this latest issue, like we had worked out like, hey, this is like, I did the paneling, like the borders, like with the gutters, like the gutters were like bigger gutters and they're white. And then we had to talk and we were like, well, we don't really like that. Like it takes up a little bit too much space. And even though it doesn't necessarily look bad, it just looked better without the gutters and just having like the individual panels. So that was like something where we're still growing and learning with that.
Yeah. And then, you know, just you'll notice the issue 1 is formatted differently than issue 2, you know, that going through Kablam for the printing, you know, we went with the magazine size for the first issue. And, you know, I know we didn't like it, but after looking back at it, the comic book standard size it just really fits what we want to do and how we want the experience to feel like. And, you know, that's another thing. Maybe we'll re-release issue 1 in a different format. And, you know, you guys definitely, if you want that to add to your collection, it's on us. So now it's time to get into the fun of things. We're going to talk about the big accomplishments and favorite parts of this issue. What I think is one of the biggest things is I mentioned earlier, just the writing is a little bit better. We've got more interactions with people. You know, in the beginning, there was a lot of lore dump. And I feel like in this one, you know, getting to see Tyron and Mike explore their friendship, the introduction of Loxley, Nodawi, Namasi into the story, just seeing Viroco being utilized in different ways than what we saw in the first issue. And I just think it looks a lot better too with a lot of the shading that came in. Like I said, Mike's, you know, I think the first issue drawings came from 2022, 2020.
Yeah, some of them were from like some of them were pre-COVID drawings in the first issue. And it's one of the things that like for me I feel is a big accomplishment because I was struggling a lot with because like I can draw like really good, and especially if it's copying I can do fast. Like I can copy some comic or anime and it'll look just like it.
Yeah.
But translating that into your own like style and drawing,
It's
it's
so
a big
different.
difference. Yeah, it's so
Yeah.
different. And so I felt like around the end of this issue, I started to hit more of a stride. And I've noticed it from other drawings too, where like I used to always struggle with the wrinkles in clothing. Wrinkles in clothing was such a hard thing for me to do. This is also partially from the other book illustration that I end up doing. But I've been drawing clothes so much now that I can actually do that without a reference. And because I understand it better and I can do that a lot quicker, and just understanding, learning the right way was one of the things, one of the biggest changes I had to make. Because if you just copy, then you're not really learning. But if you look and you understand it, and then you can make something similar and using your own way, then you really pick it up.
Yeah, I think for me, like one of my favorite things, or one of at least like the biggest obstacle and like hurdles that I had to deal with was perspective. And it's not perspective because I can't do it. It's perspective because it was creating perspective on a plane that already exists. And that in itself was just a fun thing to have to learn how to do, because it's basically looking at every page from a conceptual standpoint of it's not flat land. It's not a white space. They are in a space that you have to create. So based on where they're standing, what is behind them, how much space is that? There was a lot of times where I found myself like looking at it from an architectural perspective, and I would draw the rooms like above ground. Okay, this is where they're standing. Like there are circles and X's and little boxes and stuff like that to kind of decide this is where they are. This is what's on their left, their right. This is how close the wall is, and just that whole process was fun to kind of piece together page to page. And I was thinking it was one of those things that I think me and Kristen, like we've talked about it a lot, is like to do that kind of, I don't think posthumous is the word, but it's like kind of after the drawing is done is a little bit different. It's something that I've never had to do before, but I think it was one of those things that it's expanded the way that I kind of view perspective as a whole. So it's not something that I don't view would be as much of a challenge, but it's also something that it's kind of changed the way that I've thought about the pages internally. So it's like now, like going into the next chapter is like, hey, we'll kind of do it more of a collaborative effort where we can talk about like, hey, what if we looked at this page from this angle? What if we looked at it from this perspective to focus on specific things, kind of looking at it more so for like a, cutting up a movie versus, writing a book.
Because I would add one of the things we could even try with that, just hearing that, is we could also try doing it like the opposite, where you do the background first and then I draw the people into
draw the people in it. Yeah.
Because if they're the background, because I feel like it could be a little bit easier to like, because once all the background in that setting is there, it's easier to draw them like where they need to be at. But I'd add like, because it's surprisingly harder to, because it's one thing when you're drawing a full page to then think of some of that stuff to like a smaller panel and to make it fit on like a panel. It's a different thing. Hold on.
Because you find yourself having to like focus on like different, like close-ups and stuff like that. Like, if you're drawing Chris where he's sitting right now and Chris is, turns to the left. Yeah, we can draw Chris's whole face, but why do that? Why not focus on like Chris is looking at something? So whatever the next, it's like you're showing and not telling. You're giving people just enough of the concept to understand what the purpose of that focus is. Focusing on his eyes let us know that whatever it is that we're going to see next is what Chris just saw. So it just kind of changes the whole concept of how we view comic books. And that was just something that, not only, it's just not something that I really thought about until you actually have to do it. I remember, me and Chris follow this guy named, Greek Weeb. And in one of the comic books, he's doing the Four Nights of the Apocalypse. I remember seeing a page and then seeing it immediately. I was like, he didn't finish that week. So he drew just enough to get him to the next page, and it's something that we don't necessarily have to do. But it's like Chris said, it's like, we'll draw something today, we'll color something today, and then the next month we'll acknowledge that this could have been different, and then we can put that on the future pages. So I just look forward to the whole process of this growth, because I know this is just the beginning.
Yeah. Another thing I really like is just that, I mentioned the dialogue. I'm so excited that we're starting to get into more of the core characters that are going to be involved in the story, actually getting, more Viroco users. By the end of the chapter, we've seen almost an equal amount of good and bad users. Once you take into account Loxley and his two students, along with Borgo from issue 1, the two dudes in the evil lair and their master in the hood. So another thing that was a challenge and an accomplishment between the first issue and the second was just kind of keeping interest. We've all had other other projects involved, and being able to work on those other projects while still giving Viroco attention before we can get that second issue out. Kudos to Mike for being able to release some of those promo images. Thank you to Dom for getting those edits up that we were able to share, like sneak peeks coming up. I think the quiz was a great addition. If you haven't already, check out the personality test we have to find out what type of Viroco user you would be. We've got some merch on the website. We've got the different Viroco class seals. We've got some promo art. Just the website in general has been good to have. I think a lot of people have checked it out. It's one of the most visited pages we have.
Nice.
So yeah, what other type of stuff do you guys like that we did in between just to kind of keep the conversation going?
I'd say a funny thing is, well, a funny thing to me is we kind of got like one of our first memes from for Viroku with handsome Borgo. Whereas I'd semi forgot what Borgo looked like, and all of a sudden he's super
this handsome,
super chiseled in this one panel.
Again, who is this? Who is this
man? Who is he fighting?
I was like, it's Borgo. He's got the mohawk and everything. And then I was looking at it more and more, and I was like, you know what? You are right.
It's like, wait a minute. One of the things I loved is just, and shout out to you, Mike, once again. Like you did another one recently. Is all of the mashups. You started with the Naruto one. You've done the DC Big Three. You just did Jedi's recently. So just all of those little mashups are always probably pretty dope to me. It's cool to see. I'm always just a bit an advocate for taking characters and putting them in different scenarios, because I think that's the things that we like most about most of our shows. Like, we find characters that we resonate with, and we love to see them doing things that we would love to do. So just to see, our main three cast members and different forms of themselves, and also get them in this chapter, like you said, Chris, like I was going back into reading a lot of this chapter, and I noticed just like little intricate stuff about like you seeing like their personalities. I thought one of the things that was so subtle, but it was Namasi calling Dodawi Dawi. And I thought about that immediately. I was like, I like that, because it shows a sense of familiarity between the two. And it's not like a a love or a loving relationship. Is more of like, nah, that's definitely her brother. Like they've known each other for a long time. You can see that. Seeing little things about how Mike, Kenya, and Tyron kind of talk to each other, like when they're watching Godawi do his thing. It's just like everybody has this little banter. It's a lot more organic. It feels more like, you know, to me, it went from the first one being so serious and like, you know, this is what it is, and like we in this place, and then the second one felt more comical. It felt more like your favorite show, Yu Yu Hakusho. Like,
yeah,
like almost everyone had their little quips, but they weren't exactly the same. Like everyone was just like a little bit different. You can see Mike is a bit of an ass. Like it's like when he mentions something, like he kind of standoffish about it. It's like that's some bullshit. Like what you talking about? Like that's just kind of who he is. And you get more of that character, more of that personality in the second one, and I thought that was pretty cool to see.
Yeah, I think it reminds me a little bit of like kind of like Avatar vibes, like how they have like groups, like Team Avatar and all that.
Mm-hmm.
I'll also say, because like this week I did that promotional one for the 4th, but I did it late because I just thought about it like the day of. But like even just from doing that, looking at the little things with each of the characters, like they already have so much details and they're fleshed out that it was the easier transition to like, oh yeah, Namasi has the blue lightsaber because she's a guardian, right? And then just the other fit as far as with like the positions too, like even though Tyron's the main character, it still makes more sense for her to be in the middle at like this point.
Mm-hmm. Because she is the powerhouse right now. Like it makes that she is the knowledge. Like, so it's funny that you mentioned that too. Like you've drawn them so many times, they start to, you know, it goes less from it being your style to it being the Viroco style. And in editing, I started to notice that in myself too, because there's some pages where I went back and I'm like, oh, like, you know what? I have time. Let me go ahead and maybe try to make it looks like this character. So I'm using your old art to change other art, and I'm like, I've done it so many times. I'm like, oh, I could probably draw Mike's style completely now because I've just tried to recreate it so much, and it eventually gets to that point where it's like I start feeling like I start correcting my lines because like, nah, that's not the Viroco line. Like that's not what it looks like. That's my line, and I just felt like the more I did that, the more I started to see. I was like, all right, I'm starting to really define what this. Like what it looks like now and what it will look like tomorrow. Like it's really all coming together.
Yeah. And I would say too, like being such a big consumer of like nerd media, like comics and just anime and other things, it's still, for me, the desire is still there to push out like our own stories still.
Yeah.
Is like I'm a huge Invincible fan, right? But there are certain things with Invincible that like I'm not a big fan of, right? And so it's
spoilers.
It's nice to know that I have, like not putting any spoilers out there, but like it's just looking at stuff like that. And again, it's not even necessarily like some of this stuff is like, oh, it's just purposely to put down kind of like Black people in a way.
Yeah.
But it's if you're not a person of color, you're not Black, like you don't understand how that comes off as. Whereas we would have a better understanding of that. And it's like when back at one point where everything for Black History Month was some type of Black struggle movie, and they're like, celebrate Black history. Like it's like 12 Years a Slave. I was like, no.
And it's funny that you mentioned that because I found myself locked in on all of the Tubi shows, and like so of course you got a lot of Cartoon Network, and it just really shows me how well Cartoon Network did it. Like had how well of a job Cartoon Network did in some of the shows in their representation, like it not feeling like forced, especially Kids Next Door. That has always been my favorite show. Is where my name comes from. Code name came from something. So I've been watching it a lot more recently, and I've just been like kind of paying attention to the relationship of like Abby and her sister and stuff like that, and where they do have some of those little funny joke tropes and stuff like that. Clearly, her dad is Bill Cosby, but to me, less than that is making fun of a black man. It feels like them making fun of Bill Cosby. So in that aspect, I was like, I'm not so worried about like the amount of, I guess, representation or if it done in a joking way. But I feel like with the more you pay attention to them as sisters more than as characters, is like y'all really did a really good job of making them feel black and not making them feel black in a white show. Like they felt not only did they felt different, they felt better. They felt cooler. Like was it number 11, Maurice, one of the coolest characters in the show, the first one they showed to go on to the Teens Next Door to introduce the idea of something greater than what this show is. And they do that with a lot of different characters and stuff like that. So getting that feel of like what things could be, what things should be, and then being able to be a part of like actually doing it ourselves, it just means something to me.
Yeah, because like I would add, because it's not really a spoiler for like Invincible, but it's like for us, we would have a better understanding of the viewpoint of it. So like with Invincible being like Asian, right? Being mixed with Asian. And then you have Bulletproof being black. But like Bulletproof as a character, he is a joke character. But like I don't think everybody like necessarily knows that, because Invincible was originally supposed to be Bulletproof. Was supposed to be his name, but they already had another comic that was Bulletproof, so they changed his name to Invincible. So Bulletproof's whole character and like his outfit, like they showed it in like that episode where he got the costume. That was his original costume, what it was going to be in like the designs, but then they ended up changing it. But then it went to like Bulletproof. But the issue with and so essentially Bulletproof is just a like, he's like Invincible from like Timu, right?
Yeah.
Which it's a funny idea, but just the added implications of just being black in America, and then just that comparison of where Asian people, and like being half Asian myself, but where like Asian people were put on a pedestal as like, hey, these are the good minorities. And then like black people are like, and so
there's another situation where it's like some person is pitting races or pitting minorities against each other.
And so even though that's not the point of why he has it in there, it's unfortunately in our society, that's what we've had to deal with.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's having that kind of a little bit closeness in like the comic happening. It's not something that somebody that hasn't gone through it would be able to understand that. Right. And so us having that unique look and really being able to apply that in our own story, I feel like is a big thing.
Yeah, because I feel like something like that in our own story, we may write something like that, but we're going to write it from the other perspective. So that way you understand how it feels.
It'd be something that would be really just like addressing it. Like,
exactly.
Like we would be able, because I don't even think he even knows that like I love Robert.
Yeah, it's not something, it's foreign to him.
I don't even think he even knows that that's a connection to like what he has on there. Right.
Yeah. And he's, much like us, has gone back and done some things that he said that I know more now. You know better, you do better.
Yeah.
Exactly. Let's wrap this bad boy up. That's some awesome insight from everybody, but now let's do favorite moments from the comic. What were y'all favorite moments from issue number 2? Codename, let's start with you.
Favorite moments from Chibi Kenya.
Chibi Kenya.
Chibi Kenya.
That was something where, and this happens a lot, I see something in my head and you guys do something that's different, and I like what you did more than what I originally thought. I was just thinking like just a little talking head, And then to see just like the full body there and, you know, the expressions on the face and how, you know, the body also gives off the personality. Yes, that was beautiful. And I like where we did the chibi version of Pike. And at first it was just his floating head. And I was like, this looks like a ghost. It was making him look like Chibi Kenya.
Yeah.
What about you, Mike?
So for me, I feel like it shows in the art where the two new characters show up. And it's just like, because I don't know, I feel like it was just that fatigue in a way that I was like, finally I get to, I can draw somebody else. And then it was just like, I feel like
also that came.
I
remember when I saw that girl, like,
don't even look like
I remember seeing that. I was like,
they don't have all the folds and like,
all the folds, boy, everything. The wind was glistening on them.
But I'm excited to see it because it's for so long we've been, and it's not like a negative thing, but for so long it has been like we've been building this world, but we've only really introduced 5 characters, right? And then it's just like it's been the same 5 characters for like. For me and Chris, it's been years now. And then like, cause we even have like the little pre-drawing of, oh my God, Xander and,
Sanjay.
Yeah, Sanjay, right? But it's like, they're not released yet. And so they're a little bit in the back still for now. But it's like, it's been the same 5, 6-ish characters, which isn't bad, but it's like after a while that fatigue can set in. So like, getting to introduce more people into it and then just branching out a little bit more to like, I feel like that was a big highlight and getting excited and just really the journey really like starting. Cause we're still really in that intro like stage. Cause I feel like if this was animated, like this would be like the first episode.
Yeah. The first 2. Yeah. It'd be like a movie up until he left.
I think the first 2 issues would be enough for one episode.
Yeah.
Just like start to finish.
That's kind of like the feeling that it has for me in a way.
Yeah. And, you know, I was a little, you know, in hindsight, I probably would have tried to, you know, put more into that first issue as far as story goes. But I think that, you know, we need to go back to just appreciating the slow buildups. Like, look at the first issue of One Piece, the first issue of Naruto, the first issue of Bleach, Dragon Ball. Like, even the first episode of Avatar, the first episode of Gargoyles. Like, you know, you have to get invested. You have to let these things marinate. And I feel like a lot of these new things, like, they start off so bombastic, and then when they start to die down, everybody's waiting for the action. They're waiting for the big moments. They're waiting for the new transformation, the OP character to pop up. It's like, no, we're starting very slow. It's going to ramp its way up. There's going to be some big things here and there. And that kind of translates into my favorite part, and it would probably be from Tyron waking up to him making the decision to leave with the Loxley and the others, because everybody got a speaking part. Everybody got something to do. You really got to feel what these characters are about. You know, in the first issue was really just Tyron and Mike talking. So after you get to see Tyron talk to Mike, Tyron talked to Mike. Tyron talked to Pike and Kenya, him meeting new people, how he is with that, how abrasive Loxley is, how chill Dodawi is, you know, how determined Damasi is, you know, you kind of get to feel all these characters who are going to, you know, pave their own way in the future. And it sets up the plot. You know, this is the story going forward. That first couple pages in the issue, it lets you know the background, but now we're set up to where we can explore those temples you saw in the first issue, those different displays of power that were shown in the first issue. And, if you pay attention to, our social media channels and, just using context clues, you can probably figure out what's going on with Tyron, but you don't know what to expect just yet. So,
a couple characters you can kind of figure out some stuff, which is kind of cool. Which is another thing I thought was cool about this chapter within the writing is you wrote it. It sounds silly when I say it, but it's like you wrote it like you know what's gonna happen next, and you wrote it with the idea if you're paying attention, you could also know what's gonna happen next. But it's like it's done in such a way that when people do figure it out and they start to notice like the little nuggets that you gave them, like it's worth the payoff.
Yeah. And I think that just, knowing what's going to happen in the story, being able to bake these things in, honestly, I love doing this, but this is the most frustrating part, knowing of all the things that are coming down the pipeline. So thank you everybody for checking out this issue. The next issue isn't going to come out in 3 years. We're going to have it a lot sooner than that. And we'll even have some more things coming down the way. Depending on when this drops, we will be in the middle or hopefully just starting a program we're doing with the local library here, teaching kids in our area how to create comic books and, make sure that they don't stumble the same way we did and that they have a cleaner launching path and, kind of give them the tips and tricks to get started. We've also got Foe Patrol, which you've seen on our socials getting started. Make sure, shoot us a message, fill out a form, get on this newsletter we're going to have rolling out with other updates. We've got Viroco, Foe Patrol, Legends of Folk is in the mix. Check all that out on our websites and socials. Anything else before we sign out here, fellas?
No, I appreciate everybody's support, and I hope they just look forward on like all our books that are coming out. Because, like I said, it's definitely going to be an uptick in some of the quality. Because, like I said, for me, I was busy with stuff at work. I'm finally clear for the most part with some of that stuff from work, and then also just like I did that other book that I can't really say much on here, but I don't really plan on. From some of that other stuff, I plan on putting more of a focus just on Countdown is my big thing because I like Countdown and the setup a lot more than like because from dealing with some of the other stuff with just professional illustration side, I just feel like it's frustrating with some stuff here and there, but it's still nice to be able to be a bigger part of that process and that creative process with everything. And it just feels like we're building more than just Viroco and Legend of Folk and all these other stories, but we're really starting to build our brand.
And same, yeah. Like I'm right there with you. Like I am in the process of kind of getting Astro Print off the ground, but like I've already kind of acknowledged that if anything, right now Astro Print is just one of the production hubs for Countdown, and I'm perfectly okay with that. Because personally, right now, what we got going right now, to me it just makes more sense to put more of my focus into what we got brewing, and as that continues to grow, then so too will my own thing. So it's just putting more effort, putting more energy into what we got going now. I know I've talked to at Noxim about all the cards that I'm looking into creating, and I just, like I said, I'm putting the stamps and seals on all this last page. So knowing we got Foe Patrol in the tuck, I'm really ready to start getting to building that world, and ultimately starting to build more. Whether it be Countdown cards or trading cards or whatever the case may be for any of our Countdown characters, and also getting some of my writings off of the ground too. It's just look forward to a lot. Look forward to a lot.
Yeah, and you stuck around this long. If you go on our website and you use the code Viroco2, you will get 99% off one item in the shop. Use it as your discretion. Damn near free. You know, it could probably go lower than that. We'll say that for another time. Special.
Right.
Yeah, but thank you all again. It's been great. You've been great. We appreciate the support. And until next time, keep nerding, friends.
Peace.
All right. Peace.